Hello, welcome to Cat's Got Your Tongue, the podcast in association with Cats Protection. My name's Adam Brown. I am a cat lover and a very proud cat dad as well. And this podcast is a chance for us to celebrate all things cat. We've got funny feline stories. We've got celebrity guests telling us all about their cats. And of course, we're here to solve your cat dilemmas as well. Now, as much as I adore cats, they're probably the most important thing in my life, I'll be honest with you. There's still loads I don't know about them. I'm learning things about cats every day, and I'm learning things about cats every time we do this podcast, because I'm joined by our cat expert from Cats Protection, Nicky.
Hi, Adam.
I'm still learning, you know. I feel like I've become way more knowledgeable, though.
Amazing.
I know.
As I said before, though, like, we're always learning. Like, you know, the most qualified expert who does all the international talking, everything else, they're still learning about cats because there's always new research coming out and new things to learn. That's why cats are so cool.
And I still pass off loads of your knowledge as my own as
That's
well.
fun, but it is your own knowledge now, isn't it? What's mine is yours, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate that. I was like, you do know that cat, and everyone's go, wow, Adam, you know your stuff. I was like, yeah.
And you're just like, I don't wear this shirt for nothing, you know, guys.
I feel like I've earned the right to wear a cat print shirt. So anything new in the world of cats with you, Nicky? Anything to report back? Have your cat been up to anything in particular? No?
It's just done quite a bit of sleeping, quite frankly, yeah. He's getting, I think, because the weather's starting to change in the last, few days and stuff, he's been out in the garden a bit more, mostly because I've been out there a bit more too. Yeah. And you can just see the look of joy on his face. It's like, oh, we're going out together.
It's outside time.
Yeah. How about you? How about Ruby? How's she getting on?
She's good. I think I want to get another cat, though.
Oh, why is that?
Well, you know, obviously, if you listen to this podcast regularly, you'll know that at the end of season 1, which is worth going back and listening to, by the way, I did touch on the fact that I did have a second cat that I got in summer of 2023.
Eliza.
Yeah, Eliza, and she really sadly passed away. She had a heart defect, and it was just a horrible time.
Devastating.
Yeah, and it was. I only had her for like a couple of months, and I was in that phase of trying to do a introduction between Ruby, that I'd obviously had the cat that I had for a while, and it wasn't going great. Eliza was like the sweetest little cat, and she just wanted to be friends with Ruby. Was like, this is my house and that's my dad, like, stay away from him. And so it was a bit of a weird dynamic, and I always like, I don't know if I could ever possibly get another cat. Like, Ruby's my priority now, and she is. But as mentioned before we started recording this podcast, that on Instagram, my entire feed is just cat videos. 80% cat videos, 20% chicken wings. That's all it's been showing me on my algorithm. And literally, it's just
that sounds good to me.
Yeah, and it's a great algorithm, but at the same time, it's just, I keep seeing these videos of really cute cats and these like inspirational like stories about cats that in rescue, and now they've really been, and I'm like, oh, could I do more?
That's the thing. I think when you love cats, you want all the cats, don't you?
I know.
But Adam, there's 150,000 cats going through rescue every single year, and you can't have them all.
I know. But how do you? Because obviously, Nicky, you're around, working for Cats Protection. You're around that all the time, and as a cat lover, it must be difficult to not be like. Because I just see pictures of the Cats Protection social media of like, this is whoever, and she's the ones that get me.
Wants love.
The ones that get me the most is where they're about 10 or 11. Or even 12, and their owner's passed away, or their owner can't have the cat anymore for different, circumstances. And I always think, God, they've been taken out of their really comfortable home life, and now they're in a adoption centre, which is great. The adoption centres are great, but it's still
not a home, though, is it?
Yeah, it's different to how they've been. And I think, oh my God, like, how must they feel? They've just been taken out of this really loving house. Because I always imagine that. I thought of Ruby, what would I do?
Yeah, exactly.
So what can I do? Can I get another one?
So I think you've sort of answered your own question, just because, well, first of all, Ruby comes first.
Yeah.
And I would strongly advocate that everyone does that with their own cat. I do that with Kato, who's my cat, because everyone's like, oh, how come you've only got one? And I'm like, because he would never forgive me if I brought another cat home. And Kato's extremely territorial, and it sounds like Ruby's pretty territorial too. So, and just wouldn't cope with the other cats. Some cats do, and that's great. Like you say, you do a really gradual instruction period if they did potentially like to get on other cats. But I think you just need to get your cat love out in a different way, Adam. And I would strongly recommend becoming a Cats Protection volunteer.
Do you know what?
I think you'd be perfect.
Well, I went to the Warrington Adoption Centre, which is the closest one to me, just for like a look round. We recorded a few bits of audio and stuff, and I had some pictures taken down there. Met all the staff; they're all amazing, and they let me into like where the kittens are, which was like the secret kind of bit. Where it's like I had to get all like all like the
PPE.
All that kind of gear on. They were like, Adam, step into the promised land, and they open this door, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like the perks of being involved with this podcast. I was like, this is amazing. So I went into this like, it's just like if you imagine like the happiest place in the world. Honestly,
it was like, your happy place.
Oh, it's like the best place you could ever imagine. Like honestly, and they had like, and to be fair, the Lindsay, who's the manager down there, she was like, you love calico cats and tortoiseshell cats, don't you? Particularly, I went, I love all cats, but they're my favourites.
Yeah. And
she was like, you don't look in this next. Don't look at it. I was like, why? She's like, these like calico kittens in here. I was like, oh my, and honestly, if I could have looked, I don't know what I was doing in that moment. I just must have been like, I completely lost the plot. And honestly, yeah. So maybe that's what I need to do, get that kind of additional cat love out in a
different way that's helping all those cats going to and preparing kittens in particular for their new loving homes, because it's really hard for kittens in particular to meet men. A lot of our staff and volunteers are predominantly female. So we really do need some cat-loving men to come and meet the cats, and particularly with beards, and people with different appearances, basically, so that kittens get used to a wide variety of people, and then that helps to socialise them. So the actual scientific research on this shows that cats need to meet, or kittens, I should say, need to meet at least 4 different types of people in order to be socialised to humans as a whole. Yeah. So, and you'll be really pleased, Adam, to hear that another bit of research shows that kittens need 40 minutes of socialisation time daily, 40 minutes, and so you can really get to go down there.
I love the idea that they need to meet more men with beards.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I say, you'd be absolute gold dust down there. Like you'd be welcome with open arms, but also you'd make a huge difference to those kittens. And what happens, and this is the bit I really love, I get really techie on this, but you form new nerve pathways in their brains, and then with repeated experiences of you keep going down there and meeting these kittens, that strengthens that nerve pathway, so then it persists throughout life. Yeah. Ultimately, you change the kitten's brain forever.
So I'll have such an impact on their lives then, won't I?
Yeah, exactly, because then they see, men with beards, you guys are friends. Yeah. This is brilliant.
Or if they meet another man with a beard later in their life, they'll be like, oh, well, it was all thanks to Adam that I'm chilled with this person. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
And then that widens like the pool for adoption, because I mean, obviously we adopt to everybody, but it would make life easier for the kittens to adapt if they've met loads of different sorts of people. In the same way we get them used to children, older people, everybody.
Yeah, I've got to do that now.
So you can rest assured of not taking them home because you think, nope, I can't do this to Ruby. She's not going to be happy with me if I do that. But also, all the different kittens that you would be helping go live their best lives with other people. And it's a little bit like, how some people are like, I really love children and babies, but I'm quite happy to hand them back at the end. Yeah. You can do that. You can have all the cuteness, but let's face it, they're quite messy. Yeah. They can be a little bit smelly. And also they're not climbing up the curtains and causing absolute havoc. They can do that in the adoption centre and in the new person's house, and you can just go in for the snuggles. Yeah, that's what I'm like. So you get the best bits.
That sounds like my nephew and niece. I'm just the uncle, and at the end of the day, but there you go. You can have them back now. But I definitely think that'd be something that I need to look into, because it was just I mean, who doesn't love kittens? How can you not? It's the cutest thing ever. Okay, so listen, I'm gonna make some more inquiries about that, because last time I went down, they were like, Adam, you should come more often. So I definitely need to try and do that.
You'd be very welcome.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. So as always, Nicky, you're on hand to answer any questions people listening to this podcast might have about their cats. If you do want to get in touch, by the way, you can give us a shout. You can email us pod@cats.org.uk, or you can now send us a text, or even better, a voice note. So if you've got a question that you all ask Nicky, you can just ask it very easily on WhatsApp now. Just send us a voice note, 07824 551076, 07824 551076. We want your funny stories, any cat-related dilemmas, any questions you might have about the world of cats in your Cat's Tales, which we are going to do later on with our very special guest. Talking of which, let's get him in. So if you've not heard the show before, of course, we're joined by celebrity guests who adore cats just as much as we do, I suppose. And today we are so thrilled to welcome onto the podcast restaurant critic, columnist and presenter, Mr. Giles Coren. How are you? You all right?
Fantastic. Extremely well. Forgive me if I glance away occasionally, but my cats, one of my 1.5 cats, is asleep literally just on a footstool to my left, and I just have to occasionally turn around to check she's okay, which really means just get some sustenance from her adoring sleeping presence.
Do you know what? On any of the podcasts, people might think that's a little bit rude, but on this podcast, it's actually encouraged more than anything. Yeah, they're just like, because you can't, if there's a cat in the room, it takes over everything, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, they come first.
Yeah, of course. That's absolutely fine by us, Giles, yeah. So obviously one of your cats is there with you currently. So, let's start, as we always do on Cats Got Your Tongue. Tell us a little bit about your cats, names, what they look like, how long you've had them for, just the usual kind of little intro to your cats.
Well, mine's weird, and sometimes cat people and cat behaviourists sometimes think I might have done something wrong. I mean, we had a cat behaviourist, a very celebrated one, in and out a couple of times with a problem that we had. The situation is this: asleep on my left is Iris, and Iris is coming up to 5, and she came from someone my wife knew, and she had it was a Burmese father and a ragdoll mum. So, but she's 99% ragdoll. I mean, she's got this lovely Burmese sort of fluffy grey look. And the thing is, she's our cat and we love her. She was our B cat because we got her with her brother, who was sort of our A cat, and they had the same dad, the same Burmese dad, but a short hair mum, I don't know, mog mum or sort of whatever, And everything was rosy with the two, and he was called Mo Tenzing. And we have 2 children who are 13 and 11 now, and they each got a cat to name. Well, there are cats, but we said, there's family cats, but we said to my daughter, you can name the girl. God, this sounds a bit trad and gender critical, doesn't it? But still, we said to my daughter, you can name the girl. She was about 7 at the time, my daughter, she's 6, and she was very into Greek myths. So she was going, right, Aphrodite. And I said, I can't go out in the street calling Aphrodite in North London if she goes missing. And she goes, well, what about Athena? And I said, same problem. Is there a Greek goddess which sounds? She went, what about Iris? I go, yep, we'll take that. Iris isn't okay. And then the boy named the cat. My boy's a QPR fan like me, but he was very into Mo Salah, the Egyptian Liverpool striker, so called him Mo. But our Mo loves climbing, so he was like Sherpa Tenzing, better than normal cats. So he's Mo Tenzing, and sometimes Iris gets called Iris Tenzing as if that were her surname. It's awkward anyway.
No, this makes perfect sense, because as cat owners, you do end up kind of having some weird, kind of obscure names for your cats anyway. So that actually on this podcast again sounds quite normal.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, and I hope I'm a bit of a cat loon. You asked me a question, I would just talk for the full length of the podcast. And then also there's a sort of nominative determinism in that Iris is actually if she wakes up, well, I might just wake up. She's an incredibly beautiful cat, and we live on a North London quite busy street, but we've got flaps at the front and the back. And she just wants to go out in the front and be petted by people in the street, and they go, and she's called Iris, like she's a Greek goddess. It's all lovely. Now, listen, the thing is, it was all they were happy for about a year and a half. Everything was rosy. We've got a place we go to at the weekend sometimes. They come with us to this place in the Cotswolds. We stopped doing that because it's this little barn in the middle of nowhere, and it's so surrounded by birds and mice who have never been a predator up there in 200 years. And these cats who behave themselves in London, never killed a bird in London. They get out there and they killed everything. So we stopped taking them there, and they brought them back to London. But they were quite. And then there were people who say, should you travel with cats anyway? Anyway, all was well. Then Iris got pregnant. She wandered around at home. She had these 3 kittens at home. The kittens were lovely. The children loved the kittens. It's all a bit crazy. You know what it's like when you prepare a nest for her somewhere, but she just goes and has them under the spare bed and something. And Esther's sisters, she's got a lot of sisters, each took a kitten, and the kittens are all happy. But from around that point, they started not getting on, Mo and Iris. And over the next 2 or 3 years, Mo, who had always been a wanderer, kept disappearing. And if he disappeared, he'd get nicked. And he would eventually find, when some new owner who'd given him a new name finally took him to the vet, they go, yeah, he's not yours, and there'd be a weepy thing, and someone would bring Mo back. And then Mo came to live with us again for a while. And we go, what are we doing wrong? What is it? And we went to speak to a cat behaviourist and says, look, just because they're brother and sister doesn't mean they're going to get on. She's a strong, territorial female cat. And he kept wandering up. There's a housing estate we back onto. And she kept going up there. It's right by a railway track. Mice and rats galore. She loves it. And these people on the housing estate, there's a sort of halfway house there. There's a kind of, it's an old people's home. And now it's people who can find no housing, and they're itinerant. They're in for 6 months. They're not allowed to have pets, which is very sad for them. But Mo would go in and be their kind of group sort of help cat, and he was getting off on the love of like 30 different people, sort of semi-homeless people who had it, and they just loved him, and he got round the rules of the cat ownership, and eventually one of them,
they find a way, right?
Yeah. Exactly, and so they were getting, Mo was getting all this love, and they would sometimes one of them would feed him, and then he wouldn't come back at night, and then they got very good about not feeding him, and then eventually it was getting silly. He'd need to go to the vet to have an injection. He'd need to go to the vet. He had a tooth problem, and we couldn't get him back because we didn't know where he was. So sorry, this is such a long story. We let one of these guys who lives up on the housing estate up there. We let him adopt him. So we let Mo go to him, and we changed the papers over, and he now feeds him, and it's had an amazing effect because this guy was basically like not in a terrific place in his life. When he didn't want to take Mo because he couldn't afford it, so Mo's done a great thing for him and all the people, and Mo still comes back to visit, and because he comes to visit 2 or 3 times a week. He still jumps up onto the counter in the kitchen where I get the butter dish, scrape off a bit and spread it on the top, and he licks it down. He'll eat some of Iris's food. They look at each other. They even very occasionally still groom each other, but Mo won't stay, and he won't purr. He'll purr if you go and see him on the estate, but he won't purr when he comes to our house. And that is the story of why I've got 1.5 cats.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of like a kid moving out to university or something.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And then, but he'll still come back, but pretend like he's not loving it. But really, like, won't purr, won't say he's pleased to see you, but secretly he is. You know what I mean? And he's got
use your resources, like
yeah. Still have a bit
some food.
Yeah, have a bit of butter now and again if he comes home and stuff. Like, I do that when I go back to my dad sometimes. They've got a full fridge, just raid the fridge and take my washing home. You know what I mean? I'll do that still.
That's it. I feel like standing there with my hands on my hips saying, "You treat this place like a hotel."
Yeah. So I mean, that's amazing that I suppose. How does that make you feel though, Giles? Are you pleased about that, or do you miss not having him there as often as you did?
My wife, it still makes very upset, and she sort of feels like sometimes she wouldn't want him to come because it reminds her. But I've managed to persuade her over the 6 months, look, he's not going anywhere. It's better than if he'd gone. This happens with cats. She thought you buy 2, they're siblings, they'll be friends. In a kind of anthropomorphic way, if we went away and left them, we always get someone, a cat sitter in or a neighbour to feed them, they'd have each other, which of course is not how cats work. Yeah. But or some cats do, some cats like it. But so it made us feel sad. I'm glad that he still comes. He's still a beautiful cat. I also think this notion that people who don't understand cats have dogs. So dog owners, and it's fine, I like dogs too, but they think cats just, they come and eat and they pretend to love you. This is a prime example. Iris is here because she wants to be here. Mo doesn't want to live here, so he's gone away, and we've let him go away. If you love him, set him free or whatever.
I completely agree with that.
And he comes back. He's living his best life. Iris has had all the cat bred out of her except the beauty. She doesn't want to sit with people. She wants to sit with people. There's particularly, she knows when it's fried chicken night because she'll get the knuckles. So in some ways, I feel we've done the best thing. These cats have sort of chosen us, I think.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating kind of story, and like how different the 2 cats are as well. Just want to pick up on something that Giles mentioned, Nicky, about people who have outdoor cats. They'll often go wandering and not come back for a couple of days or whatever. How do you kind of lean into that? Obviously, Giles has been able to do it and lean into it and just kind of let the cat do it. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It's quite. I suppose some people would struggle with that.
So there's lots of things here. First of all, make sure the cats are microchipped. So we've got the microchipping laws changing on the 10th of June. So everyone needs to make sure their cats are microchipped by then. So then, like Giles had, the cat can get returned to you. But also, it's really hard when you've got people that feed your cat. And then, because cats will naturally want to go there. So it's about raising awareness with local neighbours to not feed the cat, which again, Giles has done with them.
And also I had a collar. Please don't feed the
cat. Yeah. We've also had it at the vet, when I used to work in vet practice, like some places we got as far as saying, like, just put a diabetic collar on even when the cat's not diabetic, just to sort of, because it generally puts people off at that point. And so, I mean, I've certainly spread the rumour about my own cat to be like, oh yeah, he's on a special veterinary diet, and and lay it on quite thick and things like that. And then people are like, oh, we're not going to touch that then. Just because, there are certain people that are more likely to feed other people's cats and not really realise the law around it and the fact that they are owned by owners. And it's really good that Giles actually got the papers signed over, because, you need that legal line ownership transfer.
It comes up a lot on this podcast, doesn't it, in terms of the whole sort of debate about indoor, outdoor. And I think really there's no there's no right or wrong answer as such, is there, Nicky?
No, it's about looking at every cat's situation and also the person and their circumstances and where they're living. But in terms of like risks of outdoor living, there's lots of risks for indoor living as well. And I think a lot of those get overlooked. So whether it's like household products, I mean, I've certainly had cats in the vets because they've been accidentally like jumped in the toilet and covered themselves in bleach. So, it's not without its risks, and it's just weighing the sort of cost benefits up and then trying to do the best cat welfare you can for your own cat in their situation.
Yeah. Giles, can I just ask you about generally why you wanted to get a cat in the first place? Was it you that's the cat enthusiast in the household, or is it your wife?
I'm quite well. So I'd have found it. I find I get more emotionally attached to things and people and whatever than my wife, which sounds terrible. I mean, do I love her more than she loves me? We both grew up with cats. We both grew up in suburban North London, and we had a cat called Percy, who when I was growing up, born in '69, and he was there when I arrived, and he was the next door neighbour's cat, and my parents had just fed him, but he just lived next door. And when they moved in 1972, when I was 3, he jumped in the back of the van and moved with them to Cricklewood, and they phoned up and said, "Look, Percy's come to us," and they went, "Yeah, you have him." And then he lived with us another 10 years, and he was ginger. He was a ginger cat who with no tail, because he'd had an accident with a cyclist in 1968 who had run him over. He was like all cats; he could hear the cars coming, but not the bicycles. So he'd had his tail amputated. And I'd never known him with the tail. And my mum used to talk about, he was so proud of his tail. I think, that's weird. How do you know? But people would always ask, is he a Manx cat? And anyway, he was a big, big, big part of my life when I was little. So it was a thing when the kids were little, we thought it would be nice that they'd had some fish that had worked a bit, and the kids wanted a guinea pig. Why don't we just skip this bit and go to cats? And we went, yep. And then we had it, and we wanted to have it in the house. I'm not really a dog person. I'm not one to clean up dog poo with nothing to protect my fingers on a cold morning from a hot dog turd than a thin plastic bag. That's never going to be me. And all the responsibility for a dog and the endless walking and stuff. Whereas a cat, I just think they make a house a home.
Yeah. They really do.
Yeah, it's spot on. Do you know everything you just said there about, I mean, I like dogs, but the way you summarised it perfectly, why I'd prefer cats. But yeah, I'm just saying. So Giles, obviously you're also famously a food writer and a restaurant critic as well. Sometimes people often say the cats become quite like their owners. I think my cat is quite like me. Are they quite fussy about food then?
Well, interesting. I mean, oddly, Mo is not a food-driven cat. He never was. He never ate all that much. You could never bribe him with anything. It was interesting. Iris, lives for her food. She will eat the specific cat food that we give her. There's a dry food. There's another thing. Along with home and outdoor, with outdoor and indoor cat, there's dry food and wet food cat, isn't there? Yeah. And she will eat it, but she gets bored quite quickly. We have, which I can't remember. We have one of the excellent brands. She doesn't really like the beef or the lamb one, but they don't do them separately. So that's what you're having, and you just keep, and it'll get crusty, and then she won't eat it. So I go and stir it with my finger to make it look wet again, and she'll lick it off my finger, and then I put some more, and then I drag my finger towards the bowl, which she's rejected all day, and then she licks my finger, and then I push my finger down into the food. And then she goes, "Oh, this is all right," and eats the whole bowl full. And I think if I was not here to do this, would she even eat?
So we're going to move on to our regular feature in a second, Giles. But before we do, anything coming up, current projects that you kind of want to let people know about?
No, I don't want to plug anything. I just want to talk about my cats.
That's fair enough. That's what we like. Yeah.
My 3 weekly columns in in the Times, and my podcast, Giles Coren Has No Idea. And I'm working on a book, but it could take 10 years, so there's no point plugging it now. I'll come back when I've finished it to talk about,
Yeah. So on this podcast, on Cats Got Your Tongue, obviously we speak to cat owners and people that are just passionate about cats. And one thing we have kind of realised is that everyone who owns a cat has got like a voice they use for the cats. And I imagine, do you have a voice that's slightly different to your everyday voice?
I'm wondering if I should wake her up. Presumably should I bring her on?
Is she awake or?
Come here. She doesn't like, she loves to be in my arms, not always when I'm sitting down. But the way I talk to her, you see, so I'll say, Iris, but I've got a nickname for her, which is, so my mother-in-law, being Welsh, calls them puchs, called cats puch, it's a Welsh slang word for a cat, puch. So we call her puch, but I also, because she likes mice, I call her puchamaus, right, with a slight German accent, like a Fledermaus, which is a bat. So puchamaus, and So there's always kind of Iris and all that, but it's a sort of language. And with Mo Tenzing, I used to say yes, but I would say juice. So I say juice Mo Tenzing, juice, which would mean yes Mo Tenzing. But then he left. And so I go juice Iris, but I go juice Iris Tenzing. And I call her Iris Tenzing as if Tenzing was her surname. But then the main, I can get her in a bit more, there is. But the main thing is that she's my pujamas, aren't you? And that's certainly loose pujamas. I mean, I really shouldn't. Nobody knows that. I shouldn't tell them. She looks like a lion, doesn't she?
The thing is, though, Giles, that makes perfect sense. I know when you actually say it out loud, you probably think to yourself, "What am I talking about?" But honestly, the amount of people we've had on this podcast, and they give us a really sort of convoluted explanation as to why they've arrived at certain phrases or the way they speak to the cat or the names they give them, and it makes perfect sense on this podcast. Genuinely,
it seems to me you just can't really help it. If you love something, you want to make these noises. And the identity is sort of complicated. She doesn't answer to Pujamas. She only comes to Iris.
Oh, she's so beautiful.
So cute. It's ridiculous.
The cat vocabulary, Iris she's beautiful, but she's not an intellectual. And she's got room in her head for literally a vocabulary of one word, which is Iris. And although I've called her Pujamas for 5 years, she will never look up to Pujamas, will you? Out the front, I used to worry. People say, "Oh, that's a posh cat, that is. That'll get nicked." And I used to worry that my half-breed Mog here was going to get nicked because she looks so beautiful. She's got this amazing fur, which you can see if you ruffle it there, it comes white. At night, she looks like a ghost cat running through the garden. Where's her tail? She's got this amazing bushy tail.
Aww.
And this amazing face. But we were very clear. We would never go and buy a pure breed cat anyway. But they get, my wife says they get kind of all sorts of kidney complaints and whatnot and teeth. And you want a Mog.
You do.
You just sort of felt lucky because that is an absolutely stunning looking cat. I mean, I love all cats, but absolutely unbelievable. Yeah.
But so true that like a lot of the pedigree cats do have a lot of like inherited medical diseases and conditions that come with them. So, like you say, moggies all the way.
Yeah, adopt, don't shop.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, we're just going to take a brief pause there, Giles, and we're going to move on to our next section of the podcast, our cat's tales. Now, on Cat's Got Your Tongue, it's time for your cat's tales. This is the part of the podcast where we get to hear from you. So you can ask us anything from your cat dramas to your cat birthdays or any other cat-related questions. We're here to help. So before we hear from people listening to the podcast, Giles, do you have any cat-related questions? Anything you've always had a burning desire to find out about the world of cats?
Well, so many. There's behavioural ones relating to my cat. As I said, we have this thing where she wants to sleep in bed with us, but she wakes us up at about 5 or 6, and we need the extra couple of hours sleep. And I want her there, but my wife doesn't. So, because I kind of, if my wife would cuddle me, I would be okay. But I want a cat to cuddle as I'm going to sleep. I don't, particularly in the winter. But when we put her downstairs, I worry that thinks she's been turfed away. Does she know I love her? It's that. But sometimes, so basically, I come down in the morning, and some mornings she's just asleep in the kitchen on the sort of footstool or on the sofa, something raised, just sleeping, doesn't even look up. And some, I open the door and she shoots out. And I sometimes wonder whether that's because we do get other cats coming through the cat flaps, and she doesn't really like. So I just wondered, is it okay for her to sleep without us downstairs? Does she know that? Is she sort of thinking that we've locked her out? Does she think she's locked out, or does she just think, nah, I'll sleep here?
It depends on the individual cat and the circumstances. So, for example, if she was in the bedroom and then you pick her up and take her out, then she's probably going to feel a bit more turfed out compared to a cat that's just their routine and they're used to it. The way you can make it easier for her is if she's got all of her cat things there, but also just some really nice cat things. And cats all love heat. So Adam's laughing at me because he's like, this is my next purchase. I can see you thinking it. Like a fancy cat bed where they're heated, particularly for winter. I know people that have got one per cat and it works beautifully. And then it's all nice and warm, and then it works out. Yeah, then the cat's unlikely to miss you as much because they've got this beautiful heated cat bed.
What I do, I'm glad you say that. Where are you going, Iris? You're going to go and turn off my... where's she gone?
Oh.
What I try and do, I'm very reluctant. The way I break it down with my wife, I'm very, very reluctant to pick her up and take her out, because then it's something that I've sort of done to her. If she's out, then I go and shut the downstairs things. But then, and because I think, well, look, she was out and she'll come back in and feed. But then I think that she'll be angry with me for she's come back to her home and I've shut the doors on her. Does she think her home is the whole house or the kitchen, or does she think it's her bedroom? I don't know. These are just psychoses of mine.
Not at all. It's fine. And like I say, loads of people will be thinking the same thing about their cats and what to do in the situation, probably having the same debates with their partner as well. So consistency is key. So you kind of need to pick one or the other, like bedroom or not having her in the bedroom. And then, yeah, because it's the let them in sometimes and not others. They don't know what the rules are. And as in,
well, I was hoping to train her to, if she behaves and doesn't wake us up, she gets to stay the next night, but it hasn't worked.
I've got some tricks for that in case you might have tried them already. But if she's waking up at 5 a.m, one, obviously that's when the light tends to come in. So getting blackout blinds and things like that to try and block the light out for as long as physically possible and try and trick her body into thinking otherwise. If she's waking up for food, which is super common, getting a automatic timed feeder where you can literally set it to go off like maybe even just before 5, away from the bed, and then she can, sort herself out basically, like a little buffet at 5 a.m. that she can help herself to.
We have always the food available, so we don't do time. That's one of the things. The food it's a bit like my children when they come in and go, "Can I have breakfast?" And you go, "Yes, just go to the kitchen and make breakfast."
Yeah.
The food is available in the kitchen downstairs. The dry food's always out, and it's nice, sort of that nice, fat, chunky good for teeth.
Other ones.
And there's usually wet food out as well, because neither of our cats are ever pigged out.
Okay.
And they've always food out, because that's how I know where the mo's been, really. So this is, I want her to get up and go. Using some food in the bedroom itself would be the thing.
Well, I was thinking almost away from the bedroom if and then she's less likely to disturb you. But if she's already got wet food down, because sometimes it's the wet food that they're getting people up for, and that's what you can put in these feeders because they've got places for cool packs underneath to keep it fresh. Another thing is if she wanted to play, for example, you can actually get nighttime toys, which is really exciting, that they're quiet, like little balls that are quite soft, that are quiet when they're batted. They've not got bells or anything in, but also they've got patches on that glow in the dark, so the cats can actually see them properly, because they can't see in pitch black. They need some form of light to be able to see, and that can keep cats amused quite nicely.
Do you know what, Giles? Every time we do this podcast with Nicky, she mentions like new products, and I'm thinking to myself, this is more things I'm going to be buying for my cat now. Honestly, a heated bed, I've got more toys she's going to want. Honestly, well, not one, but I'm going to buy for her anyway. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. I know exactly where you're coming from with that though, because I feel terrible because I get up at ridiculous o'clock for my radio show, so I know that if I just let my cat into the bedroom, she'll just be walking around my head and I won't get to sleep. So I have to actually, she doesn't sleep in the bed with me. But I feel terrible. Then at weekends she wants to come in and I'm like, should I just let her in all the time? And yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you don't want to, it sounds mad, but like you don't want to let them down.
But all of us are like that. Like I said, my daughter picked up on this like from about the age of 3. She was like, couldn't possibly move. I'm going to be late for nursery because I've got a cat in my lap. I couldn't just take her off. That would be sorry, take him off. Yeah. So
it is weird. You'll go through this whole thing of like, oh, are they going to think that I don't want them in the room? Are they going to think that I don't love them now? And honestly, it's the sort of the psychology and the emotions that you go through. And
also the things we do for our cats. Because I was showing you that photograph of my cat where he was asleep in one of the bedrooms, so I couldn't possibly open the blinds because he needs some dark. And in the summer, I had a fan on for him. And
but of course, no. The making a big double bed around a cat. Because you want to go to, because if she's not allowed, if she hasn't slept with us in the night, she'll always come in, and she's been out, she'll sleep all day. She'll come into our bed in the morning, and then you have to make, and I hate an unmade bed, so you make the bed, but with the corner turned up with the cat asleep in a tiny unmade patch of it. And there's a lot of you're watching TV. Who hasn't held a wee in for an unnaturally long period of time because they can't get up because of the cat. As a man, I have occasionally tried to go to the loo with the cat in my arm and do the whole zip fly thing with that, and it's occasional disaster because I can't put the cat down. And then on the basis that go and make me a cup of tea because I can't get up.
Every cat owner knows that one.
Oh, it's brilliant, that, isn't it? When the cat chooses you, it means you're exempt from doing any chores or anything. It's so good. It's like I can't possibly can't move.
We've got a thing where we want to get our floor done, downstairs floor, because it's all got mat and just needs to be varnished and sanded and it'll take sort of 3 days, but what are we going to do with the cat? Because the cat can't walk across it. Where are we going to? I have no solution. We have to lock her upstairs or something, and she'll just think the world's ended.
Yeah, I know. There's so much psychology behind it, I think, and I think that, it's difficult, isn't it? Because the practicality of, everyday life and then obviously cat ownership, it's kind of sometimes finding that happy medium and that balance in it, I suppose.
I mean, particularly with the floor varnish situation, if you can keep her safely upstairs where she definitely can't escape and walk over it, because you don't want any of that getting onto her paws or fur, then that could potentially be an option. Or getting her into a reputable boarding cattery, which again, I appreciate fully that you're gonna struggle emotionally with that idea. I know, but it does mean that she's safe. Whilst the varnish is, because it's the fumes, it's getting on her skin where she might lick it off and it might be toxic for her. So it's
cats and DIY.
Oh, I know, literally cats and DIY. They hate it as well. Yeah.
She's literally calling now, and I do speak her language. She's calling because she wants me to open the door because oh, you're back.
As if by magic.
As if by magic, she's Iris, where's he gone? Iris, there we are. Because I shut the door and she wants to get out and she'll mew again. It's very interesting because that's her let me out. She's got a hungry mew and she has got I've got a mouse one, which is really menacing.
We all know that one.
Yeah. Giles, a couple more questions we'll just squeeze in. A question that's coming from Jessie about her cat Douglas. She says, my cat Douglas is a terror for bringing in birds. He's very agile and we do have a lot of trees around our garden. I love the birds singing outside and hate the thought of him scaring them or hunting them, but I understand it's just natural cat behaviour. How can I stop him preying on songbirds? So Nicky, I know Cats Protection did some work with Songbird Survival recently as well, which might kind of tie into the question that Jessie's asked about her cat Douglas.
Yeah, definitely. So we've actually done quite a few interviews and stuff recently, and what I really like is that you've got a cat and a bird charity collaborating together, which I think has thrown a few people.
Yeah.
But we have got this joint messaging, and that is that, sort of tips to help people, and that's to play with your cat for at least sort of 5 minutes at a time, a couple of times a day. Because that, as she just pointed out, it is a natural behaviour. But if we can get that natural behaviour out in a different way through play, that can really help to sort of make the cat feel, happy, releases endorphins, but it keeps the songbird safe. And there's some research by Exeter University that shows that playing with your cats regularly does actually reduce predation or hunting by 25%. So that's really useful. And the second tip is to change the cat's food, obviously gradually, to avoid diarrhea, onto something that's like a high meat or content, high protein content. Yeah. And again, the same research showed that reduced hunting behaviour by 36%. So that's really helpful too. And then the third tip, particularly this sort of time where it's nesting season, etc., is just to keep the cats in during dawn and dusk, and Cats Protection would say overnight as well. So again, birds are most vulnerable and most active during dawn and dusk. And also from a cat perspective, it's helping to reduce the risk of road traffic accidents too. So again, there's a lot of tips where it's win-win for both cats and the bird population too. And a lot of it's just about knowing your cat. So she knows Douglas really well. She knows that, like you say, he's quite a hunter and the sorts of prey that he'll go for and where the ambush sites might be. Yeah. But if you're a keen bird lover or animal lover as well, and many of us are, myself included, you can still really help birds and wildlife, but in a different way. So, for example, if you want to put a nest box up and you're really worried about the cat killing fledglings, most people are going for blue tip boxes because they're commonly available. But first of all, blue tips are doing okay population-wise. But from a conservation perspective, it's about getting swift boxes and house sparrow terraces. I love the fact they call it a terrace. It's because they communally nest in there's a long one like this, and it's 3 different nest boxes in one.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So they're a bit more chatty and communal. But and those go really high up on the house, just underneath the eaves. No cat's going to be hunting those, so they're nice and safe, and you're doing a massive thing for conservation. So it's win-win all round.
And there's
really.
just very slight kind of changes in routines and that kind of thing, and it can make a huge impact, I suppose. So
definitely.
That's great. We've got one more dilemma we want to squeeze in, Giles, that we can hopefully get your opinion on as well. We're going to end with a voice note from Clyde in Malta. He's got a dilemma about a cat who's a stray, and he wants to know how he can get it into his home to ensure it doesn't eat or drink before an operation. Let's hear from Clyde.
Hi Adam, furthermore to the situation with my cat, I need to take him to be operated on by the vet, but I need to keep him from eating or drinking for 24 hours before. Now, because it's a stray cat, I need to keep him inside my house, and I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do that. It's a bit tricky, so I'd like any advice on what I can do. Thank you very much once again. Clyde from Malta.
Tricky one, that, isn't it? I mean, I've got no experience dealing with stray cats at all. Obviously, you've had a little bit of experience, haven't you, Giles, with strays in the past?
Yeah, it's interestingly when the eventual decision to let Mo go to this guy on the estate was there was a medical issue. He had a teeth thing, which they get, and I hadn't been checking them as often as I would, and he hadn't been going to the vet, and he needed some teeth out. He needed quite a big dental operation, and he had to not eat. And there was, how are we going to get him in? And so we did it. We brought him in, and he was our cat. He eventually came in, and we locked him in because he was, to let him be semi-stray was going to make it hard. I got to confess, I go up there and do his flea thing, flea him once a month and worm every 3 months, even though he is as if he were a stray. I just feed him the thing. So it's the thing you have to. I mean, I'm sure this guy in Malta can get him in. It's that the thing when they want to leave, and you have to be strong and keep them indoors for 24 hours when they want to go. That's what it was with Mo. Mo thinks he turns on you. Suddenly you're his jailer. But you have to do it.
Obviously, some cats are more, adventurous than others, and like Giles said there, if you sort of keeping a cat in, the cat is probably thinking, you're denying me of what I normally would do, and maybe it's again stopping the cat from eating or drinking before a vet's visit. You probably feel quite cruel doing that, but I know it's like grooming a cat. Sometimes my cat hates being brushed. I'm like, this is for your own good, like please understand that I'm doing it for you. So how do people approach that, Nicky? How would Clyde get on with that situation? It's quite a tough one, that, isn't it?
It is, and particularly just because it's also in a different country as well, so they're going to have different sort of rules and regulations compared to in the UK. Because in the UK, for example, you'd particularly want to find out with a stray cat, is it owned by somebody else? So you'd need to take reasonable steps to try and locate an owner first before taking them in to, particularly to do an operation. Obviously, you take them in and get the scan for a chip. But then, if you establish, this cat doesn't seem to have an owner, I'd also just double check it with the vets as well as to the length of time. Because it's really, you know what it's like, you go to the vets and it's really stressful, isn't it?
Yep.
And it's hard to take in all the information that they're saying. So sometimes it'd be a case of just double checking what were the instructions again on how to, but with withholding food and water. Because typically it tends to be withholding food from very late at night, and then you're bringing him into the vets first thing the next morning. So it's usually not that long.
Yeah.
And if you're saying 24 hours, it obviously depends what the surgery is, and obviously the individual practice policies, etc.
Yeah.
And then water, normally it's you can have water overnight and it's removed first thing in the morning. So that's why I'm just thinking maybe double check it with the individual vet, just in case it got misinterpreted, and that would make his life a bit easier if you can actually feed them for longer than what you'd originally thought.
Yeah.
But then keep them in. It's just like Giles said, you've just got to do it and hope for the best. And I don't know how socialised this cat is out in Malta as to whether it's had a lot of contact with people in its socialisation period of 2 to 7 weeks when they're a kitten, or whether this is more of a kind of feral or partially socialised.
Well, that's going to be even more difficult
because that would be
even
even
more.
more.
Keep him inside and he's completely not used to being inside.
Exactly. So that would be more challenging as well. But if, for example, the cat was a full feral cat rather than a socialised cat, then it might be a case of going down what we call the TNR route, which is trap, neuter and return. And that's commonly done. It's done in the UK, but most people don't seem to be aware of it. But it's much more, I guess, be more familiar with it abroad. So trap humanely using a large cat trap. And from there, you would probably just trap them and then take them straight to the vet practice.
Yeah,
and
I've heard of that before when I've been on holiday in Greece and places like that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of initiatives that they have to,
Definitely.
kind of help the stray communities, I suppose. So hopefully, Clyde, that helps, and you get a bit more, assistance and insight into the best way to do that. So good luck with that. Good luck to the cat Douglas as well. Giles, one final question for you on Cat's Got Your Tongue, something which we generally ask all our guests. What's the best thing about owning a cat?
The cuddles.
Great answer.
That's a brilliant answer.
just you saw when she sits in my arm along the length of my arm, doesn't do it with anyone else in the family, and her feet hang down on one side. Esther, my wife, always says she looks like a monkey, and then she lies there indefinitely and purrs. And then I like an afternoon nap as well, so I often work right hard in the morning, go out, have a bit of lunch, because as a restaurant critic, or even just have a bit of lunch, and then I like a siesta, and I have a bed in my study, and I lie down and I call her, and whenever she's in the house, she'll come and sleep on my chest. And I'll sort of go to sleep with her purring just sends me off nicely to sleep. But that's an extension of the broader cuddles benefit.
Yeah,
it's living the dream, isn't it?
Do you know what? When you described that, I was like, can I have your life for a bit for that day? Just specifically that bit. Because my cat isn't. She's loving, but it's very much like she's a little bit standoffish with the sort of the affection. Because she was a rescue, and I think she's had like a bit of a complicated start in life and stuff. But
maybe not socialised to men, particularly men with beards.
Might be
we
that.
About earlier.
Yeah, could be that. Yeah. It seems to be like a lot of cats don't experience, being around men with beards. That's why all kids are terrified of me as well. Like in supermarkets, kids look at me.
There's a cat already asleep on your face.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, she's like, whoa, there's another cat in the house. No, it's just my beard. Giles, thanks so much for coming on Cats Got Your Tongue. We've loved having you, mate.
Pleasure. It's been very enjoyable. I could talk about cats forever, as I'm sure you know. That anyone with cats just wants to talk about cats.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thanks again for coming on to Cats Got Your Tongue. That's it for this week for Cats Got Your Tongue in association with Cats Protection. Thanks again, Nicky, as always.
Thank you.
Remember to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell your friends with cats and anyone you know who loves cats about us. Share the podcast, give us a review as well. And if you want to get in touch and share your very own cat's tales, you can give us a shout, pod@cats.org.uk, or you can send us a text or even a voice note as well on our WhatsApp, which is 07824 551076. 07824 551076. We'll see you next time on Cats Got Your Tongue. So if you've got a few spare hours a week and fancy doing something amazing for cats, why not become a cats protection volunteer? From cat care to fundraising and everything else in between, Cats Protection want cat lovers like you to be part of their team of dedicated volunteers. You can find out more now at cats.org.uk/volunteering.